CTV family. Catch.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, manene, nani manene guys, welcome back to the biggest show in the motherland. We go by the name of EKSE Live. You can catch us on Facebook. We are also available on Twitter, which is EKSE_live. Do dial us 021-448-0448. Your boy Lamali Moon is in the building, and I'm in there. Dwell Snallo. Join us, is still holding the fort with me. We'll be with you right through to the hour 5.
Definitely, man. It always feels so good to be back on your television, giving you nothing but the best of edutainment. We're all about making sure that you are actually educated. Speaking of education, right about now, on the yellow couches via Skype, we're joined by someone who's very educated. He holds an LLB degree from the University of Wits, and of course is very passionate about how we can use technology to actually bring about changes in our society in a very positive way. Very passionate about finance, technology, and of course policy making. We are joined by Nqobile Khumalo via Skype. Nqobile, welcome to EKSE.
Thank you for having me. I'm quite excited to share what it is I have for you guys.
You look rather lonely. Are you at home? Are you not back at the office yet? It's level 3, come on.
You know, so for some people, this lockdown had been quite a shock to the system. I'd already started to work from home. You know, just the efficiency gains from it have been immense. So, my work situation is pretty much what it was prior. So to me, the lockdown effects were quite limited.
Oh, okay, cool stuff. There's about your technology and socio-economic issues we dilishana nazo on a daily. So umbuzo wokuqala wami is, how can technology be used to actively address socio-economic issues up in South Africa? And maybe we can even broaden it the continent in Africa as a whole.
Well, it's going to be a great equalizer. For me, that's how I see technology. Technology is the great equalizer. So what you don't have in, call it typical resources, financial resources, you can quite in a meaningful way, gain back through technology. And I think that will be the case for most African individuals, because if you look at the progression of how it's become quite ubiquitous for a lot of individuals across the world, not even just Africa and South Africa, but across the world, how the power that you hold in your hand every day has become readily available, and you can use it to access all sorts of information and all sorts of learnings, which would have been inconceivable, call it 20 or even 30 years ago. So I think technology is going to be the great equalizer. It is going to be about people who use it, right? So you need to be able to use it well. So the limitation is going to be about the individuals and less so about the information that's available. Information will be there, but how you ask the questions and how you get information together is going to be important.
Yeah, and of course, technology makes sure that actually abantu everyone reaches and receive the same information. So I think it's going to be a very good thing, especially in the coming decades. Speaking of decades, what can emerging economies do to make sure that they prosper in the coming few years? Because we've seen the growth of India, we've seen the growth of Brazil, we've seen the growth of China actually making so much good impact. How can other emerging economies such as Nigeria, South Africa actually make sure that they prosper in the coming few decades?
Well, what's going to be important again, so, I mean, you mentioned technology, so the support that needs to come through from the infrastructure, right? So it doesn't help if you have a powerful smartphone if you don't have cell reception in a remote village. So, how do we foster, how do emerging economies make sure that they can be a part of this growth cycle? It means that they need to empower their people, and they need to do that by making sure that, fundamental things are available for people, right? Whether that is electricity, whether that is cell reception, or the access to tablets for those in schools. That's going to be absolutely essential, right? And it's taken a virus to make us aware of that. But those who have been looking at the space have have actually not been as surprised as everybody else, because I mean there's clear indications that that's what we need. This notion that, you know, the amount of people you can educate is limited by the room that you have, a physical room, is dated. Can you imagine that? You can only educate 40 kids. And now with the power of internet and access to, you know, tablets, you can now have a teacher that teaches 200 kids, 2,000 kids, 200,000 kids, all in the safety and vicinity of their own homes, or wherever it is they have shelter and access to internet and connectivity.
But when Nqobile, now I'm curious as to find out about, because siphila kwilizwe le fourth industrial revolution. Ngoku abantu that were not exposed to technologies, how long is it gonna take for them? Because I can imagine by a challenge, So how are they gonna keep up, like you just said, when Asnalo, because this is something foreign, something new to them.
You know, so it's interesting you say that. So interestingly enough, I don't know, you know, what your personal experiences are, but I don't, you know, how many of these cell phones or electronic devices come with manuals? Very few is the answer, and that's because they're so easy to learn. I mean, it's I can't remember the last time I got a phone and needed a manual to figure out how it works, right? And it really does. In fact, it was my grandmother's birthday over the weekend, and we got her a cell phone. And yes, she was a little bit nervous about, you know, how to use it. It's a touch screen, and, you know, introducing her to things like WhatsApp. But never did it dawn on us that she might need Emmanuel or something that might instruct her. It's all just intuitive, and that's really how the movement is going to be. These technologies are built to be quite accessible. They're built to be easy to learn. So for those people, I would say it's not so. It's really about your internal fears. How willing are you to accept that this is a new type of technology, and just like any other thing that you didn't know before, and you can think of yourself in your own personal capacity. Imagine something that you started out 5 years ago, what you didn't know, and how easily it comes to you now. Things that you don't even think about. And that's really what it is about learning anything. That is where you start is not an indicator of where you will be in a couple of years' time. So what might be difficult now is going to be easy to you and come as second nature in a few years' time.
Yeah. You've mentioned something earlier on about the importance of infrastructure, which is something that is absolutely lacking in the African continent. And the African Development Bank has raised issues about the fact that most countries in Africa, in order for them to have a good infrastructure, they have to borrow money externally from other continents or other countries that are not in Africa. That are not in Africa, which means we've got so much debt to pay back. What does this mean? What does this say about Africa as whole?
Well, that's a very important question. And to your listeners, I mean, it's a very important question for themselves to also answer, right? And look at what it reflects upon us. And I think the most important thing that it reflects on us is that we don't invest in ourselves. We are quick to say to other people they must invest in us, but we are not so ready to invest in ourselves. And that's an indictment on all of us. If you consider yourselves and you look at businesses in and around you, what is it that you're doing to invest in those businesses? And it's not a matter of money. It's really just a matter of changing the thinking and the logic behind how it is we think we can improve the economies and in turn our own livelihoods. And it really does start with a sense of responsibility to self and other. So if you see that there is a local business there, an investment doesn't necessarily have to be a large sum of money. It can be as easy as, you know what, instead of going to shop A, I'm going to go to shop B.
Yeah.
because shop B is in my community, shop B employs people in my community, and instead of going and finding someone who can do A in a foreign community, how about I do it in my own local community, to improve the set of circumstances that I'm faced with every day. That's an investment. In terms of more, call it, traditional definitions of
Yeah.
investment we speak of in the finance world, again, you can equate that same logic and reasoning to our own failures as a people. So if the South African government doesn't invest locally in South African business, who else must invest in those businesses?
And we also need to invest to our local businesses.
Yeah.
It's not only about the government, it's about us as citizens as well.
Having said
Precise.
that, yeah, okay, carry on, Nqobile.
No, precisely. I think it's 100% right. When you say you as us as private individuals, that's absolutely right, right? So if you think about how someone might invest in shares on the JSE, why can't you take that same level of investment and invest it in a local business in your community? What's preventing you?
Yeah. Having said that, when Nqobile, a new sustainable finance system is a core pillar of economy and
Yeah.
which serves humanity. In your opinion, how can we achieve this?
No, it starts with exactly the previous question, right? It was question about, so how do we, what does it say that we have such a large external debt number, and the fact that we don't invest locally in ourselves? And I think the answer lies in that question.
Yeah.
So we do need to invest in ourselves. We do need to spend time looking and starting to value our own talents, our own skills, and fostering those skills, right? So it makes no sense to teach me about something that's completely unrelated to my reality.
Yeah.
It makes no sense that we spend time learning things which are not rooted in what serves my economy. And that's really where, you know, the rubber starts to meet the road, and where we start to see real impact. Because now what it means is that now you're not walking around with civil engineers struggling to find work in a place where we actually have such a high infrastructure need.
Yeah.
How is it that how is it that we have graduates that are unemployed, yet we say there's a skills shortage? Then there's clearly a disconnect. So it could be that we're training for an economy that no longer exists. And that is a scary, scary thought, because in this conversation of free schooling, free education, it means we're about to spend money on skills that we don't actually need. Perhaps what we need to do is to start to think about, hey, maybe we need to start training people for the realities in which they live and work. So instead of training an accountant for an accounting firm that exists in theory, how's about we start training accounting students to help Easy shop to account for the works? How's about we start training people not in film production but in content creation? How's about we train people in making things for where they live and work? That's where the conversation needs to go. And so when we talk about investment in ourselves, we need to be very broad about what that description is.
Well,
I've got a crush on his thoughts, like in those
Very, yeah.
like profound. Oh my goodness.
definitely.
You work this on a daily, no reimagine South Africa.
Yeah.
Now I want to find out ZZP challenges that you come across and how do you overcome them?
No, so the challenges are exactly what you described, right? So you meet someone who's got an amazing piece of paper which says that they're a master in a particular skill set, but when you try to test it in the real world, you can clearly see that that person hasn't made the jump from, oh, I was taught for a system that behaves A, but what I want is reality B. So, the challenges are changing perceptions, changing how people think of themselves even. People don't even think or realize that as a carpenter, you could easily become an IKEA. You could easily become, a globally recognized um, product or content producer. And it is this limitation, right? This limitation that they see themselves in a particular way, servicing a particular type of economy, when the shift is clear that, we are in a different industrial revolution. So why is it that we're still training for the industrial revolution that happened 2 iterations ago?
Which definitely makes sense. Oh my God, so much wise words and
Yeah,
thoughts.
I wish we didn't have to let him go. So much
Yeah.
food for thought.
Definitely,
Nqobile.
man. Nqobile.
I feel like we need a part 2 of this conversation.
A patri whole show dedicated to Nqobile Khumalo. Well, of course, Nqobile Khumalo, man, is absolutely doing great things when it comes to finance, technology. He's got an LLB degree at that. He's absolutely doing great things. Nqobile, thank you so much.
Ngiyabonga bafowethu.
Siyabonga kakhulu. Well, that is, of course, EKSE, giving you nothing but the best of education. But right now, we're taking a quick breather, right? So we need some water. We'll be right back straight after this.
Put a hashtag on it. It's success. 7.
CTV family.